Welcome to Convicted Hearts. I am Jem Magana, your host, and today I am here with Carlos. And you have quite a story that I really am looking forward to sharing. Welcome, Carlos. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Jen. It's a great honor to be here in your show, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. So let's just jump right into it so everyone can get an idea, about Carlos. Let me hear a little bit about your growing up years. Where are you from?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll start. I was born in Central America. Um, I was raised by my grandparents. Mom left to the United States when I was born.
Mhm.
So from the moment I opened my eyes, my parents were my grandparents. Um, and I didn't know much about my mom because she lived in the US
Mhm.
and didn't know much about my father either. So I was a kid being raised by my grandparents. And for many years, uh, I just, I looked at them as my parents. But, I had a normal childhood, just normal kid playing sports. I love playing sports, being a good kid, uh, had a lot of friends,
Mhm.
was very friendly with everybody. And I could say I was a really good kid. And I started having little issues at school at a young kid because of my grandparents, because a lot of kids were, saying, hey, they're not your parents, they're too old to be your parents. And it was like the first time that I actually started like looking at them and saying, wait a minute, everybody else's parents are younger and mine's are older. And I asked my grandparent once, I said, hey, are you really my dad? And he looked at me really serious and he was like, have you met anybody else, that says that he's your dad? Or have you always seen me as your? And I said, well, I only seen you. And he was like, well, leave it as that. I'm your dad. That's your
Mhm.
mom. And that's the end of the story. So that's how I went about my life. They were my parents, but you start getting this little bullying from other kids, and it was painful
Yeah.
because I think I just didn't want to accept that they were not my parents because it started making me wonder, well, who is my mom and who is my dad? And
Right.
I met my dad when I was 7 years old. Not a good experience.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's just one of those experiences that touched my heart, because it was an event that I could say it marked me for the rest of my life.
Okay.
And when I was around 8, 9, I started hearing, hey, your mom is coming over, and you start hearing all these things, and I was like, that well, this is my mom. Like I don't have another mom.
Mhm.
But then my mom came when I was around 10, yeah, about 10, 11 years old, and I remember her coming uh, to the house and saying, hey, you're going with us to the United States. And for me, it was just a shock. It was just like, what do you mean? Like, this is my family. Like, I don't, who are you? That was my first reaction. Like, who are you? Like, and she said, I'm your mom and I'm taking you with me to the United States, and she started telling me, you'll be happy. You'll have all these things. And I remember just looking at my grandparents and they were crying. And that just, automatically I was like, nah, I was like, I'm not going anywhere, which led to kind of like an argument where my grandparents were like, just leave him here. He's happy here. We'll take care of him. And my mom was like, no, he's going with me. So I did. I came to United States, 11 years old, and it was difficult. It was difficult. I didn't know the language. Uh,
Mhm.
I was taken from what I considered to be my home, my family, and
Yeah.
put in a place where it was just my mom and my brothers. And it was at first it was difficult,
Mhm.
just do it and going to school and just kind of getting to know my mom. All of that was very difficult. And soon after that, problems started happening. I wasn't fitting in uh, at school.
Mhm.
Came back, to the house, and there was never nobody at home. Of course, at that time, I was a kid, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand that my mom was on her own, raising three boys,
Right.
and she had to work long hours. And but for me, I was like coming back from home and coming back from school to the house, and I was like, man, somebody's gonna be home, and the door will open, and it was just me by myself all the time.
Mm.
It kind of started like messing with my mind because I would remember hearing other kids like calling my name when I was younger and just playing, and now I didn't have any of that. It was just an empty house. And I remember looking outside from the window from the house, and I started seeing other kids, hanging out. And
Mhm.
I didn't know who they were or nothing. It was just kids from the neighborhood. But I could say that that was the opening for me to start looking outside and saying, well, maybe with them I could hang out. Maybe I could just make friends with them. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the end for me.
Wow. That's a lot to think. I mean, at 11 years old, your entire world changed from what you knew, as your mom and dad stability to not only, hey, I'm your mom and nice to meet you. And by the way, we're moving to an entirely different country, different language. And then did you even know you had brothers?
Well, I had my two brothers. They were over there with me.
Oh, okay.
It's just that they lived with my father, so
Got
they used to come and everything. But it was the first time that we were all like together,
it. Yeah.
And of course, I love my brothers, but it was hard for me because they had to go to school and
Hmm.
then work. So for me, I was like, man, there's nobody here. Like, I come home and it's like it was empty. And
Hmm.
I started going to school, and I guess you start hearing things, at school from other kids, and then you start learning more about life. And it
Right.
was during that time that I started, hearing, what's abuse, what somebody shouldn't do this to you, or this is not normal. And it was then when I realized that there was things that were done to me when I was a child that should have never happened to a child.
Right.
And when I found out about that, it was just like an explosion of a lot of sad emotions, a lot of hurt. Um, I started thinking about those times, and I was like, why would somebody do this to me?
Yeah.
Why this happened to me? And I would come home and there was nobody to talk to. So all them emotions, they were just hurting me. And I remember one time my mom came back from work. She worked at she was a nurse, so she came back from work really tired,
Hmm.
and I wanted to talk to her. And I remember I had like this buildup of sadness and hurt that I just wanted to tell her, like, hey, this is hurting me. Like, this is what I heard, and this is what happened to me, and it's not right. And I just wanted to talk to somebody. And I remember when she came in, she looked at me and she was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, I just started crying. Like, I couldn't even say that. I started crying, and then she just said, "Oh, I'm too tired." She said, "I'm too tired. Just go to your room and just stay in there." Of course, she didn't know what was going on with me, and she had a lot on her plate. Which I tell people, I don't blame my mom for anything that took place in my life,
Hmm.
because I made the poor decisions. Um, and she didn't know at that time. She didn't know. She just knew that she had three boys that she had to take care of, and she worked really hard for that.
Right.
And I remember going to bed that night and telling myself I would never cry again, and I would never let nobody hurt me ever again.
Mm.
I'm never gonna say nothing. This never happened. I'm just gonna stuff it. I'm gonna cover my face and
Right.
just go and take on the world. And that's what I did. That started taking me to the streets. I started talking to kids at school that were in the neighborhood, and 13 years old, I joined the gang.
Okay. So in that moment, like you said, a lot of times, especially a single parent doesn't really know what our kids are going through in that moment, and we're just trying to survive and get by day by day. But in that moment, it seemed like it was a pivotal time for you, and it really shifted your emotions to shut down and just try to maybe go into survival mode.
It was. I mean, it's like I tell you, I had so much that I wanted to share because it was eating me inside. Uh, and I didn't have nobody to turn to, and not because they didn't want to, just simply that they had so much in their plate.
Yeah.
My brothers were busy at school working, my mom was working, and I was alone, and at that time you couldn't say anything at school because you were being bullied by everybody. you know you shed a tear, you said something, they were like, oh, you're a punk, you're this. So they used all these things that, like I tell people, kids are cruel. I mean, they don't do it because they know, they just, it's just being kids.
You're right.
So
Yeah,
it's
you're
just,
right. So were you the youngest in your family?
I'm the
Okay,
youngest.
got it. Got it. And at 13 years old, when you sort of got to thinking, let me go out into the neighborhood and make friends, maybe did you find yourself looking to be accepted and a part of something?
I wanted the feeling of being in a family, just like I did in my home country where I was born.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for. I was looking to have somebody to spend time with. I was looking for somebody to have fun with, ride bikes, play sports, just the normal things that kids do. But I was so young that I didn't realize that the people that I was hanging out with, they were not into playing sports. They were
Mhm.
not into, let's just have a good, they were into gangbanging. They were into violence. They were into, it's us against everybody else. And at that moment, I knew, I was like, well, I'm not going to let nobody hurt me.
Mhm.
This is a safe place for me because they have my back. So let me put on that mask to be the tough guy and be just like them. Nobody's going to hurt me. And I could be one of the bad guys that makes everybody be afraid of him because I was afraid of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that time, because a lot of time people tells me, well, you knew right and wrong. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I knew right and wrong. But at the same time, I was so young and immature that I didn't know how to process a lot of the things that I was feeling inside.
Right.
My brain wasn't fully developed. I couldn't express my emotions properly. So therefore, I went to the wrong place, and it
Mhm.
took me the wrong direction completely.
Right. Absolutely. You had so much trauma and things that weren't dealt with, and then to just like you said, you were looking for like a family unit type feeling, and to be thrust into a group of friends or who you felt were friends that were also dealing with their own traumas, it can make for a really bad combination. I'm sure that manifested in some ways in your life, right?
It's like they say, misery needs company.
Yes.
And when you bring all that people together, nothing good is going to come out of it. Everything is, you live in a dark world.
Yes.
You look at everybody, and you stop thinking that other people exist because all you think is about, it's us, it's
Mhm.
me, it's them. And you don't even think that there's more life to it than just the neighborhood. For me, I was like, this is it. Like, I'm the king of all of this, and nobody else is going to come, and you lose yourself in that madness.
Yeah.
And for me, it only took a few years. At 15 years old, I was arrested for a gang related murder, and
Mhm.
that was the end of my life at that time. It was, I never forgot, because it was a Saturday night,
Mhm.
early, 10:30 p.m. I picked up a gun, and I took the life of another human being. But at that moment, all I kept saying to myself was like, well, he's gang banging, so he's from another hood, I'm from another hood, so he's either him or me.
Right.
And being 15, I was like, I'm not gonna let nobody, get me, because I'm so little. And I was like, I was looking for all these excuses that doesn't make it right.
Mhm.
I want people to understand that now, today, I understand that there's no justification for what I did. But
Right.
at that time, I made all these ideas in my head that made it normal. That said, oh, well, it's him, me. I'm not gonna hurt nobody. That's what I said. It's just me and him, and we're in the same lifestyle,
Mhm.
so nobody should care about this. And I took the life of this human being. that didn't deserve to be treated like that. And I was arrested within 10 minutes of the murder.
Okay, so very, very soon after it happened.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting took place. I got on the car, started driving, and 2 blocks down, the police were coming and they blocked us off. And it
Oh,
was 4 of us, and I was the only one convicted for the murder.
really? Okay.
Yeah. So at that time, I remember being placed in handcuffs, and I remember one officer coming to my ear. He said, "Your life is over." And when he said that to me, I remember just looking at him and saying, "I'm going home right now." I'm like, "You guys are gonna let me out." That's how immature I was. That I couldn't comprehend what I had just done. All
Hmm.
I could think it was like, okay, well, they're gonna let me out. I'm only 15. They're gonna let me out.
Yeah.
And we got to the police station, and the detectives came in, and I was like, "Are you guys gonna let me out?" And they looked at me and they were like, "You're being charged with a 187, right?" And it was just not, it was just not
Sorry.
register.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, 15 years old, I have a 15-year-old. It is such a young age. I could see, especially in that situation. I mean, I'm sure you were being told things as well, like, oh, this isn't going to go that way. You're going to, who knows, you'll get away with it. You're young. But I can see how it would not register and hit you right away. Um,
Well, it's what I tell people. There's a lot of contributing factors. There's
mhm,
all these things that take place. It's really a lot of people tells you like why this happened, like why did you do it,
mhm,
and it's hard to explain it because you have so much. You have your own trauma, you have your own hurt, then you have the outside influences that are going on,
mhm,
and it's just like you're stuck inside. And at that time, I made the poor decision. I made a poor decision, and of course, they came in and they were like, "Hey, well, we know you're the shooter." And I remember telling the officer, I said, "Yes, I am." I told him I'm the shooter. And I told him, "Now can you let me go home?" Because I was like, if I tell him the truth, then they're gonna let me out. And he said, "Well, I'll come back at 6 a.m. and take you to your new house." And I just sat there, and sure enough, early in the morning they came. They were like, "Get up." So he took me to the car, and I remember when the officer placed me in the back of the car as we're driving away from Rampart Station. He said, "Hey, take a look outside the window." And I'm like looking, and he goes, "This will be the last time you ever see freedom." And when he said that to me, I was like, I looked at him and I said, "No," I said, I'm gonna kill myself. That was my first reaction when he said that to me.
mhm.
Because to me, I was like, he's telling me that I will never see this again. And my first reaction was like, I'm gonna kill myself. And he took me to juvenile hall, and I remember he went and told one of the officers. He said that he's gonna kill himself.
Mhm.
And this officer came to me, right, and it was a female, and she said, "Hey, what's going on, youngster?" Like, she was trying to make conversation, and I was like, "Can I call somebody?" And she was like, "Sure," and I called a friend of mine,
Mhm.
and when he picked up the phone, he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "I'm arrested, for murder." And he was like, he stood silent, and he was like, "Oh my God, Carlos," he's like, "This is not good." And I said to him, and the officer said that I will never see freedom ever again. And I remember when I said that, I just started crying.
Yeah.
And the officer, the lady that was there, she looked at me and she was like, "You'll be fine." She was like, "We'll help you," right? But it was just like these tears coming out.
Mhm.
And I hung up, and they took me to solitary confinement, which at that time I didn't understand, but that's something that they do when you get arrested for a murder.
Mhm.
Which I think it's complicated to explain to people what that does to somebody. But I
Mhm.
remember them taking me, stripping me out, and putting me in a room. And the first thing that I did, I looked up and I saw a camera,
Mhm.
and it just drove me nuts.
Yeah.
it just like it started sinking in, like that's it, like you're done, and it was just 72 hours of hell because it was just I couldn't sleep, having nightmares, having all these things, and it was just something that I wish no other person could ever should ever experience.
Right. Give us a glimpse of what that looked like for you within that cell or that room.
Well, it makes you're stripped away from everything, so it's like
Mhm.
it's not only that you're wearing boxers and a shirt, but the whole room is empty. You have a camera, so they're watching you, and there's no window, so you can't see nothing. And this is where you're spending your first day, and so you're dealing with your own mind telling you, hey, this is what you have done. You're arrested for this. People telling you you're gonna die in here, and then here you are placed in a room where nobody comes and talks to you. You just see people passing by, and you're just like, so
Mhm.
you start realizing that at that time for me, I said, wow, my life is over,
Right.
and it was just hard for me to accept that I remember when the 72 hours came, they came and they said, oh, well, now we're moving you to a unit. And in
Mhm.
my mind, all I kept saying was like, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna kill myself. And it just kept playing in my head. I'm gonna
Mhm.
kill So they took me to this unit, and they're like, oh, well, this is you're gonna be. And some kid came up to me. He was like, hey, where you from? And I was like, well, I'm from so and so. He was like, oh, I know your homies and all of this, right?
Mhm.
And I told him, hey, I was like, I'm gonna kill myself. I told him, and he just like looked at me. He was like, ah, don't worry about it, man. You'll be fine. He's like, you're just saying that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm serious. And he was like, you'll be fine. And I said, if not, I'm gonna hurt somebody else. And
Mm.
he was like, man, chill, dude. He was like, I'm gonna have somebody come and talk to you on the weekend.
Mhm.
And on the weekend, they had this group of people that used to come from church. And they were, the support at that time, I didn't know because it was my first weekend there. And
Mhm.
the guy told one of the ladies, hey, go talk to this guy. He's in cell so and so. So this lady comes and I'm inside the cell and I look and she said, hey, how are you and everything? And I was just like, I ain't trying to talk to nobody. Like,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
Mm.
And she slides this Bible underneath the door. So I see the Bible coming in, and my first reaction was to kick it out. So I kicked it out, and I'm like, I don't want to read that.
Mhm.
She kicks it back in, and she's like, it will give you peace. That's the only thing she said. It will give you peace. And when she said that, I looked, and it was like I was looking at my grandma.
Mm.
So when I looked at her, I was like, I just stood quiet and I just put my head down. And as she walked away, I grabbed it and I found peace for the first time. When I started reading the Bible,
Yeah.
uh, you know, it's uh, it's something that it's hard to explain to people that never had those moments. But when you have experienced those moments, completely just took away those thoughts of suicide and everything. And I
Mhm.
just started reading it, like not knowing. I was just reading and reading, and it gave me peace. And I could say that my life started from that moment. Uh,
Really.
started going to court. Uh, went to juvenile court. I was called the monster. The district attorney was like, "This kid will never change. We cannot have somebody like him out here." And
Mhm.
next thing you know, I just heard send him to adult court. And I remember my attorney looked at him. He said, "They're sending you to adult court," and I was like, okay, like whatever, it's right. Because I guess I don't know how can I put it. Like the system to them is just a job, you know.
Yeah.
But for a parent, knowing, hey, my 15-year-old is now being sent to an adult course, so now he's being tried as an adult. Everybody's like, oh man, what are they gonna do to him?
Right.
So I find myself in adult court in CCB, and it was interesting that I get to the court, and the judge is writing something. So when I sit down, he looks up and he looks at me, and he looks at the cop, and he's like, "What the hell is this kid doing in my courtroom?" And he said, He's being tried as an adult. And he goes, son, how old are you? And I
Mhm.
looked at him and I just remember like real quiet said 15. And he just like he stood back and he was like, nah, he's like, this is not fair. He's like, this kid is only 15 years old and you guys are sending him to an adult court.
Mhm.
So they started talking and everything, and the judge was like, do you understand what could happen to you in this court? And I was just like, in my mind, I was like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
they already told me that I'm dying in here, so it doesn't matter. Like, you guys could do whatever you guys want to me.
Mhm.
So, the process started, and I just remember the district attorney saying, well, 25 for the murder, 10 for being gang related, 4 for the gun. And he's like adding years and years. And I'm just like, and he's like, so it amounts to like life without parole and all these things. And the judge said,
Mhm.
give him a break. The judge was like, you cannot tell me that you're just going to throw. And he was like, well, it amounts to all of this.
Right.
And he said, well, start thinking about a plea deal or something like that. And he starts talking to him, right? And he was like, okay, well, let me talk to his attorney and everything. So they're talking. And the first time he came, he said, well, he said he'll give you 25 to life. That's your first deal. And I'm like, 25 to life. I'm thinking, right? I'm like, 25 just sounds like a long time. And I was like, no, I'm cool. I don't want that. So, we kept going. And throughout this process, of course, my mom came to juvenile hall. Um, I ain't never seen my mom cry the way she cried when she saw me with the jumpsuit. And the first thing she said to me was like, "Did you do it?" That was her first thing. She was like, "Did you do it?" And I remember I looked and I said, "I did, mom." And
Mhm.
just tears that I never forgot. And she just like she covered her face and she was like, "What did I do wrong?" She was like, "I done my best. I done." And I told my mom, I was like, "You didn't do anything. I did it."
Mhm.
So I told her, "This is not your fault, mom." But of course, for a mom, it's I broke her heart.
Right.
And that we just started doing the time and going through the whole process.
Mhm.
During juvenile hall, there was a lot of fights. You're still gang banging. You're still in that lifestyle. You're still like, oh, this homie, that. Everything was a homie thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't care about anything because I just kept seeing people, oh, well, they're going to adult court. And this person was coming back, gave me life. They gave me life. We're talking about the mid 90s and everybody was getting life. And it was just like,
Yeah.
everybody's getting life. Like nobody's going home. So it's a wrap. You start thinking, you're like, this is it. It's done.
Mhm.
And I got to court one time and my attorney's like, hey, look, we got you a good deal. And he's like, it's 15 to life. And I was like, oh, well, let me think about it. Uh,
Mhm.
I went back. I got in some trouble in juvenile hall. So they sent me to solitary confinement. I spent some months over there. Came back to the regular unit, and within a day, they transferred me to the county jail. And that's when you start seeing different things about the
Mhm.
prison system, about the whole system that as a kid you don't understand because this is stuff that you see on the movies, you probably hear about it, but when you experience it, it's different.
Right.
So I remember coming to LA County Jail, the old county jail.
Mhm.
It's like everybody's huge, and I'm just this little kid, 16 years old, and I'm just looking at everybody. But it was funny because everybody's looking at me like, "What is this little kid doing here?"
Yeah.
People offering me cookies. They're like, "Hey, kid, you want a cookie?" And I was just like, "Oh, sure." I want sugar.
Mhm.
But you start seeing how they're being treated. They're being stripped naked. The officers are just like, get the fuck on the wall and all these things, right? And I'm just like, oh, like, shoot, this is serious. This is not juvenile hall no more.
Right.
I was placed in the juvenile module. I think it was 3700 floor, right next to Aztec in the county jail. So it was locked down all day. At that time, there was, like I said, there was a lot of conflict between races. So
Mhm.
you learn that this is gonna become part of your life. You have to fight to survive. Um, and you start adapting to all these things that are taking place. And I went back to court, and they were like, "Are you going to take the deal?" And I told my attorney, "Sure," because I just wanted to get out of the county jail. I was like, if this is gonna be my life, I don't want to do it here. I want to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
And the judge said, "Have you spoken to your mom?" Because the attorney went back and told the judge he wants a deal. So the judge was like, "Bring him in," and he said, "Do you understand that we're giving you 15 years to life? Like there's a life on top of the 15." My little brain at that time, all I kept thinking was 15. I get out when I'm 30. I'm great. I'm like, I'll still be young. I'm good.
Mhm.
And he said, "Would you like to talk to your mom?" And I said, "Your Honor," I said, "my mom is not going to do the time. I'm going to do it." Of course, I was wrong
Yeah.
because my mom did the life sentence from day one with me until the day I was paroled. And that's something that I started realizing every time she used to come and visit me, every time she cried,
Mhm.
time that I experienced something and she heard it. She was the only person that ever told me, she was like, if I could trade places with you, I would tell him to give me the life sentence so you could be out.
Right.
And of course, when you're young, you don't, none of this it's something that affects you. You just going along with the process. And I told the judge, like, "Nah, man, let me sign the paper. It's done. Like, she don't need to know about this."
Mhm.
So here is this 16-year-old signing his life away. Um, I signed on it, and I remember when they sentenced me, there were some family members not involved in the case. They were there for somebody else. But when the judge said we're sentenced so and so, 16 years old to 15 years to life, to they like made a noise like, wow, like this kid is just going away for the rest of his life. And I
Wow.
remember looking at them and I was like, why are they tripping? Like,
Mhm.
like I'm like, I'm gonna get out and everything, right? So I went back and I started telling people, oh, well, they gave me this, and everybody was like, Carlos, you're gonna die in prison. And I was like, nah, you guys are just tripping. I was like, I'm not gonna die in here.
Mhm.
So I went to the youth authority, and youth authority was just chaos. More gang banging.
Yeah.
Now it started being different because now it's Southern California, Northern California, and you put them together and just chaos everywhere. So
Mhm.
that didn't last too long. I got kicked out from the youth authority, and my first prison was Tracy,
Mm.
and it's just like one of those moments that you just never think, right? So I got kicked out with another homie, and we get kicked out and we get sent to Tracy, and we get to Tracy, and there's a van of 18-year-olds and two 17-year-old kids. And the officer opens the van and he said, "There's one motherfucker, excuse me my language, but I'm just gonna say how he said,
Yes.
there's one motherfucker that I'm waiting for. He thinks he's a badass, and I'm gonna show him who is the real badass here. So I'm gonna give you an opportunity for you to get off the van before I come in and get your punk ass out of the van." And everybody just froze because everybody's like, and everybody's looking at everybody. And he goes, "I'm going to call your name, the last person, just so you know who you are." And he
Mhm.
starts calling names. And I'm just counting. And I'm just like, the list is getting shorter and shorter. And then he calls the homie. And I'm the last one. I'm just like, I'm like, this has to be a joke, right? I'm like,
Oh my
this is
god.
not happening. So he pulled his face in the van and he looks at me. He goes, "You ain't that tough after all, huh?" And I was like, "Do I know you?" And he goes, "You're gonna know me now." And he goes, "Get your ass out of the van." So I'm getting out the van. I didn't even set foot on the ground, and he already had me from the back of my jumpsuit, and he just slammed me all the way to the wall. And he
Oh.
goes, "You're gonna fucking keep your face on the wall, and I don't never want to see you fucking." And I'm just like with my face all against the wall, and I'm just like, I was like, I guess this is how it's gonna go down here. So he's on my ear, and he's like, "You ain't, you ain't." He's going off,
Yeah.
and then he goes, "Get naked and all this." So he starts stripping me out.
Mhm.
They throw me inside one of the holding cells, and this is something that I always tell people that words could kill somebody, and they could scar somebody real easy. And I remember he came in and he got like really close to me. And he goes, "By the end of the night," he was like, "You're gonna be somebody's punk. Somebody's gonna rape you and make you his bitch." The moment he said it, the moment he finished, I just remember having all these emotions, and I just like, like my whole thing just started going back to being a kid, and I was just like, ain't nobody gonna fucking touch me. Ain't nobody gonna touch me. And I backed away from him, but I was like trembling and shaking.
Yeah.
He goes, "You're gonna be somebody's bitch tonight." He was like, "You think you're tough?" He goes, "Somebody's gonna rape you tonight." And he didn't know how he was affecting me, but he was really, really digging into my heart. And he kept saying like little comments, "Oh, you're gonna be somebody's friend." And there was an older inmate, and he got up and he's like, "Hey man, why don't you leave the kid alone? Like he's over there by himself. Like leave him alone." So
Hmm.
they start an argument, and the dude is like, "Open the cell and fight me," you know. So the officer didn't. So the dude comes in and he goes, "Hey youngster," he's like, "Where you from?" And I
Hmm.
was from down south, you know. And he's like, "Don't worry about it." He goes, "You got all your homies here. Just go to them, and you'll be safe."
Hmm.
Boom, like things that I was like, "This is my protection. This is my safe place." It kept me safe on the streets. It's gonna keep me safe in here. This dude just told me that somebody's gonna rape me and do all these things. I
Yeah.
gotta find somewhere to be safe, and that's what I did. You know, I went out to the yard and I started looking for the fellas, and that's how the process starts. You know, you come to prison, and you know, I was 17, and I just simply didn't know. All I knew was like that I was gonna fight everybody to keep myself alive, and 3 months after that, I went to the committee, and they were like, "Hey, you miss your family?" They were like, "Do you miss your family?" And I was like, "Yeah." You know, I was like, "I've been up north, so I haven't seen them. They're from down south." And they were like, "Well, you're gonna miss them a lot more because we're sending you to Pelican Bay." And when they said that, I looked at them, and they had like this grin on, like they were like waiting for a reaction. And I was like, "I don't care." And they were like, "Okay." They were like, "You're going to Pelican Bay." And I was like, "I don't care. Like, so what?" And they were
Hmm.
like, "Get out." You know, so they kicked me out. And some guys was like, "Hey, where are they sending you to?" And I was like, "Pelican Bay." And it was like everybody was like, "What,
Stunned.
man? You're only 17. Like, what the hell are they sending you to Pelican Bay for?" And I was like, "I don't care." You know, I was just like, "It doesn't matter."
Hmm.
And a month after, I was on my on a bus on my way to Pelican Bay.
My goodness, Carlos. I mean, just to step back for a moment to think about you landing in Tracy at 17 years old. And then do you think that cop had heard about your reputation, down south and he was waiting for you, or was he just trying to mess with your head?
Well, the officer from the youth authority, he told us when we were getting kicked out, he was like, "Oh, there's a lot of my friends waiting for you." So I
Uh,
believe because they all knew each other, because they
mhm.
used to always tell us, "Oh, we're sending you to a place where we got a lot of friends." So by the time I got there, it was like they
Yeah.
have to know each other, you know. So
Okay.
because he was like he was on point on everything that I was kicked out for.
Yeah.
He
So,
started mentioning things that I was like, it has to be them, you know. So
wow.
they're connected too, you know.
Yes. Yes. Wow. And then by the you get sent to Pelican Bay, and were you still 17 at that time?
Yeah, I was 17. That was in, I think, in May. Yeah, it was May of 98. So I was still 17 years old.
Mhm.
And we're going up, and the bus was full of people. A lot of them were going to level one.
Mhm.
There was like four people going to the shoe, and I was the only main line from down south going to Pelican Bay. So, excuse me, the guys that were going to the shoe, they were like, "Oh, hey, youngster, don't worry about it. There's plenty of homies there. You'll be fine." And
Mhm.
I'm just like, "Okay, cool, right?" So we're going up, and it's like I tell people, when you go to Pelican Bay, it becomes like a movie, because as you're starting to drive up there, the whole weather changes. The whole scenery starts like getting dark. And at that time, I'm looking at the trees, and I'm just like, "Why is it getting so dark?" And it's early, and it's like everything starts changing, right? And we get to Pelican Bay, and we're stepping out. And when I stepped outside, Jen, it was like this silence that I had never experienced before. It was just quiet, completely quiet. That I was like, "Where's everybody at?" Like in my mind, I was like, "Where's the people at?"
Yeah.
And we go inside, and I heard the cops were like, well, he's 17. We can't put him with nobody. We gotta be careful. He's just a kid. Like they're saying all these things, and I'm just like, okay. So they walk me out, and as I'm walking through the yard, I tell one of the officers, I was like, hey, where's the people at? And he's like, people? He's like, you ain't never gonna see nobody here. And I was just like, and he's like, not at this time. He's like, everybody's on lockdown. There was like some stabbing, so everybody's put away. And that's just the program here. So he's like, get used to it. And I'm just like, okay. So I walked into the pod, and you start hearing people. They're like, who's that? Like, who's that? And one of the guys was like, that dude looks so young. And he's like, I don't even want to ask him anything, right? So they start clowning, and I'm hearing all of this, and I'm just like, they're talking about me, right? So it's like this feeling that you're like, why they're saying, what is it? What's going
Mhm.
on? And one of the guys was like, well, hit him up and ask him where he's from. And the other guy said, well, man, that could be your son. Like, you can't be gang banging on your son.
Right,
And
right.
one of the guys was like, hey, so and so. And he was like, cell number so and so. And I was like, oh, shoot. I was like, that's me, right? So I was like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, how old are you? And he's like, I asked you to, where he's from, not how old is he? And
Mhm.
he's like, how old are you? And I was like, 17. And it was like everybody just got quiet, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing here? That's the first reaction. Everybody said, what the F you doing here? And everybody started talking. They were like, don't worry, kid, you'll be fine. And we'll send you some stuff. We'll send you some deodorant, some soap so you can. So
Mhm.
sure enough, when people started coming out, they're like, oh, here's some soap and everything. I was just like, all right, cool. And they're like, they started giving me the rundown. You'll go to committee and you'll get kicked out. I was like, all right, fine. And a week after that, I go to committee, and it was like the talk of every officer. They're like, this kid is only 17. Like, why is he here? And they were like, well, they sent him here, and they say he's a troublemaker. So, so the captain is like, look, it's like, I really don't want you to stay on my yard. But he goes, you have to stay here for at least a year. And he goes, and next year when you come back, he goes, I'll probably send you somewhere close to your family. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I was like, cool. I stepped out to that yard, Jen, and it was uh everybody was in their 30s and 40s, and I'm 17, and I'm just like, everybody's tatted up and everything. I'm just like, okay, I'm like, this is not juvenile hall, this is not the youth authority, this is something else.
Oh my goodness, Carlos, that just I can imagine stepping out there must have felt like, yeah, stepping out into the scene of a movie.
I mean, it is you just go through it thinking it's just not happening. You're just like
Mhm.
walking through like, this is all, I'm having a nightmare. And it's just, because your mind starts playing trips on you. You're
Right.
seeing everybody, and you're just like, oh man, like this is what I saw in the movies, but now I'm in this thing.
Yes.
And this older dude comes up, and he's like, hey, what cell number are you going to? And I
Mhm.
looked at the paper, and I was like, so and so. He's like, oh, you're my cellie. And this dude's like six something. He's huge and everything. I'm just like, he was from San Diego.
Mhm.
And I was just like, oh man, I was like, this is huge. So
Yeah.
I go in there, and everybody started coming. A lot of people from LA, so they're like, hey, don't worry about it. We'll help you out. They started, taking care of me pretty much. And I started adapting to the rules, the system. And it was just something that, it's hard to explain to people because a lot of people won't understand it.
Mhm.
Prison is a world of its own. It just, there's life in there that has everything that people don't even know that's happening in there. And for me, it was just like, well, I have to just survive and stay out of the way and just do my time.
Mhm.
And I went out to the yard, and one of the homies from down south, he was like, hey, come here. So he started talking to me, and he goes, you see those gates where you came through? And I looked at the gate, and I was like, oh yeah, I came through that gate. And he goes, well, let me tell you. He goes, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your family, nobody, he's saying, I mean, nobody will ever come through that door to save you. This, he goes, this is your house, this is your life, and we're your family. So if you think that your family is gonna come and save you through there, it's not gonna happen. So get that out of your head. This is your life, and this is where you're gonna be probably for the rest of your life. And I just looked at the gate, and it's just like I'm trying to accept what he just told me, and I was just like,
Mhm.
I was like, cool, And this older dude comes up, and he's like, "How much time do you have?" And I said, "Oh, 15 alive." And I said, "Hopefully, I go home pretty soon." And he goes, "Youngster," he goes, "I came here with 7 alive, and I've been down 30 something years." And when he said that to me, that's when it clicked. I was like, I'm dying in here. You know, I was like, that's it. I'm gonna die in here. And I have to do what I always do: survive. I have to fight. I have to
Mhm.
protect myself, and that's what I did. Just to make it shorter, I got myself in a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
Uh, just being involved in the wrong things in prison, got
Right.
myself in trouble, and within a year, instead of being transferred out, I was already being sent to the shoe.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I was already caught up in the mess and in trouble. The
Mhm.
same captain that told me that he was going to transfer me out, he
Mhm.
was on his bumper yelling at me. He was like, "You haven't even been here a year, and you're already doing all this stupidity." He's like, he's like, "You're gonna be like the rest of all these guys here. I'm gonna send you from AR to
Mhm.
ADSEC, from ADSEC to the shoe, from the shoe to BR, and we're just gonna do that for the rest of your life." He's like, "I'm gonna retire, and you're gonna be doing the same program all the time." And I
Mm.
was like, it seems like that. I told him, I was like, I think that's how it's gonna go. And that's what I did. I went from AR to ADSEC, went to
Mhm.
the shoe, did 16 months in the shoe, was kicked out to BR, and a huge riot had kicked out in Pelican Bay, 2000. So
Mhm.
everybody was on lockdown on BR, and we got there, and it was no programming. Like a week after we got there, they did a huge search where they came and they took us out for like 8 hours. They came and took all the plastic. They took everything that could have been, turned into something that you're not supposed to have.
Mm.
And we came back. We're fixing everything. And a couple of weeks after that, I was sitting down watching TV, and one of the officers comes and he's like, "Hey, here, sign this paper." And I was like, "What's this for?" And he goes, "You're being transferred out." And I was like, "You got the wrong guy." And he's like, "No," he's like, "They don't want you here." He's like, "They're sending you somewhere else." So within a month, I was in a bus on my way to New Cork. No, yeah, New Corcoran. So I
Okay.
was going to New Corcoran in a bus of like 40 something other people. Everybody was coming out of the chute. So you had a bus full of people that had a lot on their mind, a lot of anger,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
were all sent to New Corcoran.
Yeah. Just to back up for a moment, if you could give people an idea that have no clue what it's like, what is it like? The best that you can explain a riot in a prison like Pelican Bay.
Well, I experienced different riots, some that I was involved in,
Okay.
and in Pelican Bay, it's just in Pelican Bay, it was always tense. You
Hmm.
step out, and you're not you always walk with somebody, and it's just like everybody's ready for war. You always see people with boots. Everybody's just on this attack mode always. Like everybody's tense. You shake hands, and you could just feel the intensity. You could feel the coldness. You could feel that there's tension in the air.
Right.
It's something that a lot of people will never understand,
Hmm.
but you can smell it. It's like you step out, and it's just like this weight that is just on top of everybody.
Hmm.
And when it happens, the ones that I participated, it's like I tell people, it's like your life slows down. It's like you're seeing the rubber bullets. You're hearing people say, "Get down." You're fighting this person. You see fights here, but it's just like you're just like on this movie of your own, that you're just thinking, well, it's my life or his life. I have to defend myself.
Right.
And you don't even, it's interesting that you don't even stop when you hear the bullets.
Yeah.
because it's just like automatic, but it's everything's like slows down for you.
Mhm.
And when I was already in that SEG, that's when the riot took place, the big one.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
remember we're on the yard, in the group yard, and we were working out, and we just started hearing like the gun going off. And
Mhm.
you just hear the sound like boom, boom, but you're used to it because it's normal.
Oh,
But
okay.
then when it doesn't stop, then you're like, oh, this is serious, you know. And then we look through a crack from this door, and we
Mhm.
see all the cops running, and we're like, this is serious. And when they don't come and get you from the yard, then you know it's serious because they're very strict on you only have 2 hours and that's it.
Oh, okay.
And we were on the yard like 6 hours, and we're like, hey, when we're going back because it's really cold. And
Mhm.
all you have is a pair of boxers and a t-shirt. So you're like, hey, I'm freezing out here. Can we go back now?
Yeah.
Now, that night, they took us back in, and you're asking everybody like, hey, what happened? And the officer's like, oh, you'll see it on the news. You'll see it on the news. But they take the cable off. So all the channels that were local, they go off, and they start putting like channels from somewhere else. So you can't get nothing because it's like it's not out there yet.
Right.
I remember that night I was like, just well, let's go to bed, we'll find out. And then you start hearing people coming in, and I remember stepping out, stepping to the door.
Mhm.
I see people coming in with their face covered and everything. And there was this African American guy that I knew.
Mhm.
As he's coming up, I was like, "Hey, man, what happened? Everything's cool." And he just like looked at me, and his celly that was behind him, he just started going off. Fuck you, boy, F this and F you and everything. I was just like, okay, I guess it's between us and you guys.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, now I knew. And
Mhm.
from there I went to the shoe, and like I tell people, the shoe was created to torture people psychologically.
Yes.
And you don't understand that until you get there. I got there, I was 18 years old, and I walked in, and it was like, this is just like stuff that you see in the movies. You
Mhm.
go underneath this thing, and it's just like a dungeon. You start walking, you see the guards on the top, everybody's shackled. They take your property away, and Pelican Bay is all gray, like the
Mhm.
walls are gray yourself. And when you go into the shoe, it's created to disturb you because all the walls are white.
Mhm.
So when you walk in there, you feel like I remember looking. I was like, "Why is everything white?" And it just starts affecting you. It's a trip that you feel like you're in a mental facility.
I was just gonna say it sounds reminiscent of like a psychiatric hospital, like in a way, like it's created to disturb you
Yeah,
mentally.
because they take your property, which is the only thing you have, like pictures and letters, books and stuff, and they just put you in there with your jumpsuit, a pair of boxers, and a shirt. And you look around, and you're like, shoot, everything is white here. And you look outside, and the wall in front of you is white, and
Mhm.
there's no windows to see, so everything you see is white. And they leave you like that for 30 days. So it's just like I was just sitting there, and it's just like, I started making conversation with people. And I always tell people, a lot of people always says, oh, well, all the bad guys go to the shoe. All the bad guys are in the shoe. But the first good advice that I ever got in prison was from
Mhm.
somebody that was in the shoe for years. And we were talking on the van, and he said to me, are you planning on doing this type of life forever? He was like, where you're gonna get out, you're gonna get in trouble, you're gonna come back, you're gonna see me here because I've
Mhm.
been here forever. He's like, I haven't been able to hug my family. I don't know. Like he started mentioning all these things that he hasn't, experienced. And I'm just like, how long you been here? He was like 11 years already. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, but I'm here. So I'm like, it looks like that's where I'm going. And he goes, why don't you pick up a book? He goes, and start educating yourself. And he goes, you remind me of my son, he said. And he goes, if you were my son, I would want somebody to give you the same advice. He's like, I don't want you to end up like me. So I
Mhm.
hope when you go back out, he goes, you pick up a book, you get into education, you get your high school diploma, and you move forward in life. And
Mhm.
I was just like, all right, thank you, And at that time, it didn't sink in, but it was the first good advice, and it came from somebody in the shoe.
Wow.
So, I did my time in the shoe, got kicked out, and then I was on my way to Corcoran, to New Corcoran,
Okay.
and I started a whole new prison, and then the whole
Mhm.
life takes over. There's a lot of violence, a lot of riots. Uh, to go into details, we'll probably spend the whole day talking about it, but it's a lot. Uh, and I remember that was the first time my brother came to see me with his wife.
Okay. So you got a visit.
I got a visit finally, and it was one of those visits that it got me upset, but it was the beginning of different things that will come into my life. My
Okay.
brother's wife was pregnant, and we were on lockdown, so I came out to the visiting shackle. It was behind glass, so it was through the phone, and I came out. I picked up the phone, and instead of my brother grabbing the phone, his wife gets it, and she's like, "Are you ever gonna change?" She's like, "Are you ever gonna do something different with your life?" And I'm just like looking at her, I was like, "How are you?" I was like, "Can I talk to my brother?" And
Right.
she's like, "Let me tell you something. If you don't change," she's like, "you will never meet your niece." And when
Mhm.
she said that to me, it was like the first time that I was like, I'm like, "You can't do that to me." I was like, "That's my niece." I'm like, "Oh my God, you're having a girl there." And my brother's like, "She's telling you the truth. If you don't change, Carlos, you will never get to see her." And I left that visiting upset because I was like, they can't do that to me. So I
Yes.
I left, and it's funny how God works in mysterious ways, but He starts putting like these little things in your life. That event took place, right? And then I go to school one day, and a teacher, they had assigned me to school, and I'm just like, I don't care about school, man. I don't need. I dropped out in the eighth grade. Like, it doesn't matter. You get a paycheck. I just come here, and it's all good. And some time started passing by, and one day the teacher tells me, "Hey, she's like, can I help you?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm good." I'm like, "Do I bother you?" And she's like, "No," but she said, "I see something in you." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "I think," she goes, "that you want something better in the life that you have right now." And I remember I got upset, and I said, "What do you care?"
Mhm.
I was like, "To you, this is a paycheck. You don't give a F about me." And she said, "I do care." I said, "No, you don't." I'm like, "You don't know me." And she said, "I know you're somebody's child." And
Mm.
she said, "And you're a child of God." And when she said that to me, I'm like, "Nah, man." I was like, "You don't need to talk to me like that." And she was like, "Well, look, let me show you that I want to help you." She said, "I want you to sit in front of my desk, and I'm going to help you."
Mhm.
And I went back to the homies, and I was like, "Man, this lady's tripping and all this." But I was like, "I'm gonna do it tomorrow just for fun, just to have a good time." The next day comes, I sit in the desk, and I was like, "Hey, I'm here." She's like, "All right, good." So everybody in the back laughing at Carlos because,
Mhm.
oh, he's being a sucker. He's over there, kissing.
Right.
3 hours go by, Jen, and she doesn't say one word to me. And the guard comes, and he's like, "Hey, time to go back." And I remember I put I slammed my hand on the table, and I was like, "See, I told you." I'm like, "You don't give a F about me." And I got up, and she said, "I just wanted to prove you that the person that wants change is you." She's like, "I didn't have to say one word, but you never left. So the person that wants change is you." And when she told me that, it was just like something just hit me right in the face, because I was like, why did I stay here?
Mhm.
Never said anything. I could have left in the first 5 minutes. She
Ah.
gave me a book, and she goes, "Read that." She goes, "And I'm gonna help you." But she's like, "It's you who wants change."
Mhm.
I stepped out for the first time onto the yard as I was going back, and I looked at everything, and I was like, "I don't want to die in here." It was the first time I said that to myself. I was like, "I don't want to die in here. I want something different." And I went back, and that lady was an angel. She helped me to get my pre GED. She started like pushing me, like, "Oh man, you're smart." Like she would always tell me, like, "You're into." And when I got my pre GED, I was like, oh man, like I didn't think I could do this.
Yeah.
But there's always things that happen in life. I was transferred from New Corcoran to Tehachapi. So I go to Tehachapi and just start doing my time there. I spent the year, and when I was already like, oh well, I'm good here.
Mhm.
My brother brings my niece.
Mhm. Okay.
She had just been born, and when he placed her on my hands, that it fell right through. I looked at her, and I was just like, she's just too beautiful. I was like, this is I can't be an uncle that's in here, and I cannot be an example to her like that.
Mhm.
I gave her back to my brother, and I was like, I'm gonna try to change. That was the first time I told him I'm gonna try to change.
Right.
So I go to committee after a year, and the captain is like looking at my file, and he's like, he looks at the other people, and he's like, "Why is this guy here?" And they're like, "Well," and then he's like, "I don't want him here. He's been in Pelican Bay, he's been in the shoe, he's been in all this, he's in this." He started reading all. He's like, "You're out of here." And I was just like, "I'm close to my family. Like, how you gonna do this to me?" And he's like, "Save it, dude." He said, "You're going back to Corcoran." I went back to Corcoran, and just continue doing my time. From there, I went to Old Corcoran. Uh,
Mhm.
the same thing. I was living life like nothing. It didn't matter. It was again a distance from my family, so I was just doing my time. And then New Delando opened up, Norcern,
Yeah.
in 2005. So yeah, here we go. Let's take these guys and put them in the yard and mix them up, and let's see
Mhm.
what happens. And sure enough, they put all these people from different places, and the attention again. And I ended up having a job in the main kitchen.
Mhm.
One of my good friends that's been locked up since he was a juvenile too. And we're like, hey, we're not gonna bother nobody. We like this job because we eat cookies all day and we're
Yeah.
chill here.
Right.
So one time they had an incident where two other people were arguing with the officers. He hit the alarm. All these officers come, and all I remember him saying, "Them two over there, they're gone." And they come and they cuff us, and my friend is like, "This is a joke, right? They're not." And the officer's like, "No, you guys are going to the program office." And we're
Mhm.
like, "We haven't done anything. Like that happened over there. Why are you taking us? Let's
Right.
go." So we're in the we're in the holding cells, and they come and they're like, "Get naked," and we're
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, serious? Like we didn't even do anything, right?" And the whole night goes by, and like right before 10 o'clock, before shift change comes, the lieutenant comes, and we're like, "Hey, LT, are you gonna send us back to our?" And he looks at it. He's like, "No, you guys are going to say for threatening an officer, for work stop." He starts naming all these things, and we're like, "We didn't even say one word. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we never said nothing."
Right.
And my boy, he got really hot. He's like, "I told you." He's like, "Carlos, I told you this. They always do this to us, man. We're trying to mind our own business, but they want us to be animals. They like for us to act like this, man. We're not." And he's like going off, and it just like getting me on that mood again. And I'm just like, "What this?" I'm just like, "That's true, man. Like, why are you guys?" Yeah, and it was 2 a.m. and they took us out in a pair of boxers, a shirt, and shower shoes, and they made us walk for like 25 minutes in the Central Valley where it's really cold to add say. We were just like shivering and everything. We're shackled. And we're like, we could see that they have the cars and everything, but they just wanted to punish us. And
Right.
I remember we got into the cell, and my boy was like, "Carlos," he's like, "We're gonna die like this, man." He's like, "Wait, this is it, man." He's like, "We try to mind our own business, and this is what they do to us." And he's like, "I'm tired of this shit." And we're just having a conversation. Two
Mhm.
two kids that grew up in prison, both
Yeah.
those kids. And I remember I sat down, Jen, and I put my head on the table, and all I heard him was saying, he said, "We're gonna die in here." And when he said we're gonna die in here, like a tear came out of my eye, and I was like, "No, we're not." I told him, "I'm gonna see you go home." I told him, "Watch, I'm gonna see you go home one day." And the conversation ended. 2 weeks after that, they came, they took us out, and the captain said, "Look, man, we found out that you guys never did nothing, so we're just gonna send you guys back and just act like nothing ever happened." And we're just like, oh yeah, sure, right? Like nothing ever happened. Like you just your officer's gonna lie, he's gonna send us over here, make false statements about us, and
Mhm.
that's it. Like it's cool. And he's like, well, you know what I'm gonna do? He goes, to keep this on the low, he goes, I'm gonna drop some points down and you guys could go to level 3. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. Now we're talking. And we're,
Yeah, let's negotiate.
yeah, we're like, let us get out from level 4 finally. We spent
Right.
over, more than a decade in level 4. It was impossible to program.
Yeah,
Back then it was just too much violence.
right.
You couldn't go to school more than probably a week or something, then you were slammed again.
Mhm.
Um, so I go to level 3, and I get to Ironwood, and one of my dear friends from level 4 was there, and he's really happy. He's like, man, Carlos, I'm glad that you're here. And he's like, what do you want? He's like, you want to do something? You want to be involved in anything? And I said, can you put me in school? I said, can you help me go to school? And he's like, you sure you want it?
Mhm.
I'm like, I want to try something different.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right. He's like, I'll talk to the guys, to put you in school and everything. All right, cool. So he moves me to the cell with a clerk that was the college clerk, you
Oh,
know, and he goes, hey, Carla, he's like, have you ever done college? And I was like, dude, I dropped out in the 8th grade. Like, this is not happening.
right.
But I remember what the teacher told me. So I started pushing myself. I got my GED, and my Sally was like, man, let me just sign you up for one class in college. If you don't
Mhm.
like it, you're good. Sign me up. He signed me up. I passed it. He said, you want to do two? Give me two. I passed two. Give me three. I ended up doing 5 courses, and I'm just like, my head is about to explode, but I'm just motivated
Yeah.
because I'm like, I'm doing something that I never thought I was going to do. And I remember one time, Jen, when I was in Pelican Bay, I was walking from medical back to the cell, right? And I told an officer, I was like, hey, officer, can I get a book to read? And he looked at me, he goes, a book? He goes, you're a dummy. He's like, you probably don't know how to read, man. He goes, you're one of them hoodlums from LA. And I never forgot that because I felt so little when he told me that I was like, man, I was like, I just asked for a book, and this dude just told me that I'm a hoodlum, that my brain is. So when I was getting into school, that
Mhm.
was something that kept me going because I was like, I'm not dumb, I'm not stupid. I could
Right.
do it. And I was like, and then the first group came, the first self help group came, and it was Kairos. I didn't
Mhm.
know what Kairos was, but one of my friends was like, oh man, they have this thing, and just go for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I go, and this nice guy from Southern California, he was like, hey, God loves you and everything, right? So he's like, sit over here with me. And he starts talking to
Mhm.
me. It was the first time, Jen, that I sat with an African American, a Caucasian, an Asian guy, and myself.
Really?
And at the end of our class, the first day, I was like, man, dude, I like you, I like you, I like you, I like you, and I like myself. I'm like, we all have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
But we've been with this mindset that we're all enemies, that you're from here, you're from there, you're this color and everything. But in reality, we're all human beings. And it
Right.
was the first time that I was like, man, I want this, I want to get to know more people. I wanna be that kid
Mhm.
that I was before somebody took my innocence.
Yes.
Because I believe that when my innocence was taken from me, it just scarred me in a way that it was really hard to overcome that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
at that time, I was like, I want to get to know these people. And, graduation came. It was a Sunday, and they're like, oh, well, graduation's in the visiting. Let's go.
Mhm.
They opened the door, a surprise. All their family members from different churches are there to celebrate us. And when I stepped out, I was just like, what's all these people doing here?
Yeah.
And you have all these people giving you hugs and telling, man, God loves you, man. You're a child of God. They're telling you all these things that you never heard before that are just like, wow, like it's a good feeling, Jen, that I wish everybody could experience. Because there's a lot of my brothers that are still doing time that I never forget. That I always tell, man, when you give your that opportunity to change, it opens up so many doors, and it even starts a process of healing.
Yeah.
And that's what Kairos did for me. Started a process of healing, without me even knowing, but it started
Mhm.
switching something inside of me. I graduated from college with a degree in general studies. Then I went got a specialist in alcohol and drug studies. So I'm motivated. I'm just like, life is good. They brought my other niece now as the second niece, and it was just like I was like, yeah. I was like, I want to spend time with them. I want to be out one day. I want to see them go to school and graduate. I want.
Mhm.
I was wanting for them all the things that I was like, I'm never gonna have this,
Right.
but I want them to have it. And I just started doing little programs here and there,
Mhm.
meeting more sensitive people. And but then, like I said, things happen in prison. There was a assault on staff. I was inside my cell.